I'm Drew.
And I'm Tony.
Happy New Year and welcome to the first episode in 2026 of Back for Our Future, the show that goes back to look at our past and possibly yours to maybe inform our future a little bit. With me as always is Tony. Tony, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, buddy. Hope you
Yes,
had a
sir.
hope you had a happy New Year. And yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, 2026. Like we started in 2024 with this. We've gone like a year and a half plus now, coming up on 2 years. I mean, where's the time go, my man? We were just talking about that before we going on the air, but I mean, it's pretty crazy that we're getting up to close to our 50th episode, and not quite there yet, but because since we're doing every other week, we don't get there as quickly as some shows.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think like all the stuff, all the things, all the conversations. It's been a lot. It's been a joy. It's been fun. It's obviously led me down like back to not just music, because I know that's been a big part of it. It's like I've gone back to bands that maybe I haven't thought about in a moment, but also like digging into these archives of movies. It's just been good. And it's been fun to share it, not just with you. Obviously, that's the highlight, but also share it with like people who listen to the show that contact us, whether it's through our channels or independently. It's funny to have these conversations like, dude, I totally forgot about this movie until you guys talked about it, or I'd never seen it. It's been kind of a fun time to and expose hidden gems throughout the whole process. I don't know. It's been a true delight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. We go on our path, and then sometimes we come off of it to do some tribute shows or Christmas shows or summer movie shows or whatever. But we kind of do what we do, and people seem to enjoy it, so we keep doing it.
Yeah. So we're stepping off the path in the beginning
Yeah.
because last year we lost one of, I would argue, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And I think when we go over his catalog of content, it is absolutely mind blowing. But he's also got other credits, and he's obviously a writer. He's an actor. He's produced a lot of stuff, and we're going to talk about Rob Reiner. And my God, the relationship when you go, in case someone hasn't, and it'll be fun for them to experience this. In case you haven't, you remember who he is, and maybe you remember a movie or two he did. But when you go through his list of work, when you go through it, I guarantee you've seen the movie, and I guarantee you've had a relationship with this movie in some way, shape, or form. And his list is not 700 movies long. It's very curated, which makes it even more impactful when you look at his body of work. It's pretty crazy. The powerhouses this guy is cranking, and the variety. That's what I can't wait to discuss as well. It's just, he's tremendous. And I hate that we lost him, and it's a real privilege and treasure to get to talk about him today.
Yeah, well, it is, and the other thing is that he was so instrumental in TV as well. TV, and so that's a rarity with a lot of guys because you don't always do both. A lot of times you do one or the other, and he was obviously big in both. So that's kind of cool. But we are gonna get to Mr. Peter Greene before we
That's
get
right.
to. So Rob Reiner's a little bit later on. So stay tuned because we will be getting into our big tribute for Rob Reiner. But we did lose Mr. Peter Greene, who was really instrumental in the '90s, and so we're going to start with him.
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's kick off. Let's talk about Peter Greene. I think if you don't know the name directly, when we start talking about like at least three of his movies, you'll recognize him. And then there's a load more in there, but like three of them are pretty big standout roles. He had this good streak going for a bit there. So let's start with Peter Greene and talk about his body of work there.
Well, he passed away here in December, sadly, about mid-December, and the age of 66. And he's a guy that we know pretty well on this show because he really broke in the '90s, and so we've talked about a lot of his movies already, and of course we did the big Pulp Fiction show with Richard, um, where he actually does play Zed. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
had a pretty good story about all that. Um, but yeah, so I mean, he broke in doing the movie Laws of Gravity and Clean Shaven, and then in 1993, of course, he does the movie that we all love. We've talked about it many a times on this show. He played one of his great villainous characters in the movie Judgment Night, which is, you know, always going to be a classic for us, and one of the great soundtracks of all time. And he's one of Dennis Leary's, he's basically Dennis Leary's right hand man in that movie. He's like his best friend, and of course he gets killed. They all end up getting killed, but he is one of the first guys to get killed in the movie, from the as far as the bad guys, and but he's really good in it, and you could tell that he was going to be a pretty darn good actor for a long time. But Judgment Night, man, that's always gonna be a classic.
Yeah, he's great in that movie. And if you look, that's one of those movies, and we've talked about it. We obviously had a chunky episode about it. But if you go look at just look at the villains in that, and you take into account the cast of villains, they have like a perfect cast of villains in that movie. Like literally, maybe one of the greatest ensembles. It's like Ocean's 11 is known for the ensemble of great con men and Carl Reiner and all those guys, Clooney, Pitt. You have this great, but go look at Judgment Night as the opposite of that. This is the ensemble of total a-holes, and they're absolutely all just top notch.
Now he does. He blends really well with Dennis Leary and Everlast and all those guys. It's a lot of
It's
fun.
so good.
Uh,
It's so
Obviously,
good.
like Emilio and Jeremy Piven and Cuba Gooding Jr. and Stephen Dorff and all those guys. So it's a fun contrast for sure, and that's one of the things that makes the movie so great, even to this day, is that those guys are all so fun to watch on screen together.
100%.
And then, of course, he does in 1994. He has a pretty big 1994 with two huge movies, and he's, of course, playing villainous characters in both of them essentially. But Pulp Fiction, where he plays, the iconic Zed role, of course, and then The Mask, which he plays Dorian, and is a villainous character there too. Two really, really big movies that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, it's crazy too because again, both movies great. His performances are great in both. He shares screen time with massive actors, right? At the end of the day, like these big brand name actors. So this guy's come from Judgment Night, where he was sharing big screen time, to Pulp Fiction, which becomes the mega hit with Bruce Willis. I mean, he's sharing and Ving Rhames big screen time, and then he gets to The Mask, where he's got Jim Carrey, but then he's got Cameron Diaz. Like he slides in to some pretty hefty things. And it makes me wonder, if you look at that from 93 and then his big blast in 94, I guess I got to ask, not in a negative way, and I'm not poking fun at it. It's more of a concerned way, is like, what do you think happened? Do you think the amount of money and the amount of fame that he gained from that led him down a challenging path? Because he had some challenges in life. Do you think that those things, like with that much money, because it set him up maybe for success, but he chose the other path? Like you can either choose success or failure, and he inadvertently chose failure.
Yeah, I mean, as a guy who's been in this industry a long time, and have gone to many parties and things like that, I don't go to as many when I'm in St. Louis, but I used to live out in LA and such, and go to different places, and it's a pretty easy road to accidentally go down. And it doesn't really take a lot to get you there, and when you're a guy who's in a ton of movies with big names like Emilio Estevez, and you're in movies with the Bruce Willises, and directed by Quentin Tarantino, who's the hot ticket at the time, and I mean John Travolta and Jim Carrey and all these guys. It's pretty easy to slip down that road, and yeah, the money, the starting of fame, and yeah, I mean, it's a slippery slope, and you can slide pretty fast, and I think that's probably what happened. You know, Obviously, I'm not in the guy's mind, but it it's something that those types of actors are a dime a dozen. Unfortunately, like you get a lot of that, and in Hollywood. sadly, and that'll actually be a recurrence and when we talk about Rob Reiner as well. So, you know, and with his son, and but yeah, I mean, it's something that happens, and you always have to be on your best not to let that happen, and be try to rein in any type of demon you might have, and keep it keep it to moderation if you can, of course, but just not or not do it at all, which is probably better.
Well, what's crazy is throughout his career, he gets other opportunities to make
Sure.
comebacks. Because after this, he doesn't have a lot of credited roles that are, in broad, big movies. But in '98, for example, he ends up in a movie called Permanent Midnight with Ben Stiller.
It's a good movie. Yeah,
It's a
permanent
good movie.
movie. And he's I mean, even before that he'll do like The Usual Suspects and Under Siege 2. And he's gonna have, smaller roles there, but he's got a much larger role in 1996 when he's in Halle Berry's movie The Rich Man's Wife.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was another, big mainstream theatrical film. And, like you said, he'll do some smaller he was a guy who jumped back to independent films and get maybe leads in those, whereas he was getting larger co-starring roles in the bigger films. Permanent Midnight, of course. He's got a really big role in the 1999 Martin Lawrence movie Blue Streak, which
Which
is
is a great movie.
a
Great
great
movie.
movie.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in 2 years when we get there. But yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, but I mean, he's got a lot of big roles, man. I mean, like 2001, and he kind of goes uncredited there, but he had a small role in Training Day, which is you know Denzel, and a good movie called Ticker as well that came out that year as well, and and it's around this time that I mean he's still going to do some movies, but he's mostly going to become more of a direct to video kind of guy. That's going to be the what ends up kind of happening with his career, which is nothing wrong with that. Uh, but he'll do a lot of more independent films and smaller budget stuff. Unfortunately, that's kind of what happens in certain people's careers, and you don't always ebb and flow as much as you would like, and get back to where you were. And if the going word on you is yeah, he's got kind of a drug problem, or yeah, he's got kind of this problem, or he's got kind of these demons, and that gets out, it's kind of tough to get jobs that are it's kind of hard to get those movies back, like The Mask, and all the big movies he was doing beforehand. So I think that's kind of what happened to Peter. Unfortunately, always remained a good actor, always a talented guy, had a great look because he got these really really great eyes. You
Yeah.
see his eyes, you know exactly who he is. Um, and so yeah, I mean he had a great look uh, for being an actor, which is not a lot of people have a good look, but he had kind of a different persona to him, which I thought when you saw him it was unmistakable who he was, which is great. And but yeah, I'm gonna miss getting to see him because I did enjoy his work.
Yeah, same. I mean, he was one of those guys that, again, there was a doc that came out years ago that was like, I know this guy, or something like that. And it was a whole documentary on actors who who they are. I mean, guys like us know who they are most of the time, but like a lot of people didn't know who, but you've seen their faces. Like, I know that guy. It's one of those kind of things. And they cover that. Peter's one of those where you've seen him and you remember him and he's iconic and he stands out. He just didn't get the repetitions to become burned in forever where you would recognize his name. And look, anybody that passes away, especially from look, it's one thing if you pass away from age, right? Like you lived a good, healthy life, but anyone that dies too soon, that's always, that's one of the scenarios, especially like if they're an artist or in that capacity, we'll talk about the Reiner situation, but like that's always just a tragedy of some nature. And in this case, it really sucks because the guy was and could have been just this great. I always wanted him in GI Joe, and the reason I say that is because I always thought he just had what I imagined Cobra Commander would have looked like, and I always just wanted him in that. I really did. Like in my dream casting, he was one of those guys in that slot, and he would have been perfect.
No, and he had a good
Yeah.
voice for that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
it was it. It was totally it. It was like all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he would pop up in some TV shows later on too in his career.
Yep.
I mean, he
Yep.
had some stuff in that world as well, and so he was doing movies. He was one of those guys, but he popped into TV, and he's part of the main cast for a show that didn't get to last as long as it probably should have. The Black Donnellys, which I thought was actually a show back in 2007, and then on a show recurring in 2009 called Life on Mars, which was a pretty. I mean, he had some good stuff there, and then of course, he'd be on a bunch of shows, an episode here or there, Justified and Hawaii Five O and Chicago PD and all that stuff. And I think one of the last things he did was he popped up as Uncle Charlie in the episode in an episode of The Continental from the world of John Wick as well. So that's
That
kind of a
and this dude could have been in all the John Wick movies. Like
oh,
this guy, he should have been in the John Wick movies. He's the perfect guy in that world.
yeah. No, he was. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd be a great John Wick villain for sure.
Oh,
Without
easily.
like a big boss, in the John Wick world. Yeah, absolutely. He would have been amazing in that. So yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff you would have loved to have seen him, branch into later in his career. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. And he still had a great career. He's still fun to watch. And no, if nothing else, Judgment Night, Pulp Fiction, and The Mask.
Yeah,
That
can't go wrong.
three movies that most people will never have on their resume.
Yeah, yeah, can't go wrong. And they're so close together. Like that's even better for him. It's just back to
Absolutely,
back.
absolutely.
Well, do we want to step into the Rob Reiner scenario here? I bring that up because there's a lot to unpack with him in terms of like his career and again, when we start getting into all the things this guy touched, it starts to feel more and more tragic. The more you go through it, the more tragic it feels, especially as you have like, I guarantee you, like I said at the beginning, you'll have a memory attached to something that he created. And it spans ages. That's the wild part.
Well, let me tell you exactly how this happened. So, I was doing something that day, the day he passed away, and I was messing around doing something. I may have even taken a nap at one point, to be honest with you. And I was I was definitely watching football, that. And then I started getting all these messages from people, and they were about our show, talking about, when are you guys going to do a Rob Reiner show? When are you going to do a Rob Reiner show? You're going to have a lot of people to tribute because you got Rob Reiner. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And so then I figured it out, like in the last 30 minutes, it had come out that Rob Reiner had passed away, but was found, dead in his house with his wife, and they attributed it to a homicide. And a couple things kicked in. Number one, obviously this show and our tributes and stuff like that, and the movie side of me and the TV side of me was like, oh my god, Rob Reiner. Like he's huge. I love Rob Reiner. And then the other thing that kind of went in my head was I'm a big true crime fan. So now all of a sudden you got Rob Reiner passing away, but not just passing away, but being part of a homicide. So now I'm like, what happened? You become that guy. Like what happened here? Like how did this occur? And I wasn't shocked. And obviously his son's alleged to have done this, and everybody's innocent until proven guilty. We haven't gotten
Right.
that far, so it is what it is. Do you know a lot about his son? Uh, Having been in the industry for a while, I did go to a party back in 2016, somewhere when I was out in LA doing a movie. I did like 3 or 4 movies in LA, around the time of like 2016, 17, somewhere in that range, those 2 or 3 years. And he was actually at one of those parties. Nick Reiner. Uh, he's kind of a standoffish guy. I didn't really deal with him or anything like that for the most part, but I did know he was there because somebody told me it was Rob Reiner's son, and I recognized him. But outside of that, you know, his movie about his life being Charlie came out, and around the same time that party happened, and so that's kind of how I knew what was going on. But then, I had no idea that that would have occurred in their house. It was really quite tragic and awful. And I was a huge fan of Rob Reiner, not just from all the great movies he's directed, which obviously we'll talk about all those, but me as a sitcom lover and me as a huge TV fan, that was pretty tough to take.
Yeah, no, I mean it's like I said, it's impossible not to have been influenced by his work. And again, some of it could be decade related if it's more on the television, but on the movie side, it's eternal. But some of the television stuff is just absolutely nuts. Some of his acting roles are absolutely nuts. It's just it's a lot. It's a lot, a lot, a lot. So I'm gonna let you lead this charge because, like, kind of going through everything, you always do a really great job on this stuff. So I'll let you lead the charge through it, and we can kind of go from that way.
Yeah, so I mean, he's got. I wanted to kind of talk about him as an actor first because that's the first thing I ever noticed him in was acting, of course. And he would branch. He's one of those guys. He would branch in from movies, doing movies, and also doing TV. And he had, we'll talk about his movie stuff first. We did a bunch of, kind of smaller movies. He was also in The Jerk. It's the hard movie, The Jerk. He comes in and he does he's the truck driver picking who picks up Naven. So he's
Yeah.
so he's that role, which is kind of funny. Um, and of course, his really first big movie as an actor, his movie role anyway, would be This Is Spinal Tap, which to me is one of the all-time greats. It's tremendous. It's a tremendous movie. And if anyone has never seen This Is Spinal Tap, first of all, a couple things. If you've never watched it, you should watch it. Number two, if you've never watched it, good luck finding it because it's not that you can get anywhere for the most part. You'll have to rent it or from a site because it's not being offered anywhere. You might be able to pick it up on YouTube. Somebody might have a full copy of it there. I'm not sure, but that's about it. Outside of being able to actually go purchase a physical media copy of it, you're gonna have trouble finding it. So good luck with that. As big a movie as it was, and as iconic as it is, it's one of those movies that's hard to find. So I do think you should try to find it though. Of course, 1987, Throw Mama from the Train.
Classic.
Classic. He's doing a movie with his buddy, longtime buddy Billy Crystal, who they were close friends, and Postcards from the Edge. He comes in and does a little bit uncredited helicopter pilot bit in Misery, which he's going to have directed. We'll get to that movie in a bit. He's got a really iconic role in Sleepless in Seattle, which he's quite funny in, and Bullets Over Broadway. He's in Mixed Nuts, which is funny with Steve Martin. For Better or Worse, Bye Bye Love, which he's great in that. At this point, he does a lot of these roles that I like to call start work finishes as an assistant director, where he comes does like maybe like one day of work, like they probably got him for one day of work, and he'll come in and play like the doctor. He's got like he'll have like 5 or 6 doctor roles in a row here, and those are usually roles that are played by people that we would get iconic people to come in and play these roles in different movies that I've done over the years. Like I remember Christopher Walken, Christopher Lloyd coming in and being a doctor for one day on a movie that I did, and so you get guys like this to come in and do these scenes, these quick scenes. A lot of times, he's in the First Wives Club, Primary Colors, which is, of course, is a great movie. He's in Ed TV. He's in The Muse, playing himself with his buddy Brooks, who he's close with. He's in The Story of Us, which is a really good Bruce Willis, Michelle Pfeiffer movie. That if you've never seen it, it's quite great. Um, he's got a good voice role in The Majestic, which is a Jim Carrey movie. That's quite good. Alex and Emma, of course, he plays himself and Dickie Roberts, former child star.
Yeah.
he's he's got a great role in The Wolf of Wall Street,
Oh, yeah.
with Martin Scorsese's movie, and So It Goes. He's in Sandy Wexler, which is a Adam Sandler film. And he's in Shock and Awe, which is a movie that he will have directed as well. And of course, I just recently saw him in, and this is his last acting role, in directing role actually. But I just recently saw him in Spinal Tap 2,
Yep. Yep.
which I maybe not as good as the first Spinal Tap, pretty still pretty darn funny, I thought. So I really did enjoy it. That one might be a little easier to find right now because it just came out in theaters, so you can probably get that one somewhere.
Yeah. The trick with it is like he has all these. The funny thing about Rob Reiner is in these acting roles is if you had no idea who he was, you know his name because his movies that we'll get to eventually. You may have grown up with him on television because he's got a lot of great roles there, and I mean, he spanned that, and we'll go into the TV side. But the thing about him is he would pop in, and he's one of those individuals where you liked him. He was in, as Tony says, Starkwear finish, but you'd like him. He'd have a moment, and then he'd move on. But it always left you wanting just a little bit more with him. So when he shows up again in another movie, you're like, oh, there he is again. It's just one of those scenarios where he just has a good one. His TV stuff, though, because I know you were going to mention it.
Oh yeah,
This guy's TV situation is like, it alone is a legend. It's like legendarily huge.
I mean it's what broke him. Let's be honest. I mean the TV side is what really made him kind of a legend to start with, and kind of got him into being a eventual film icon. But I mean, he starts out on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. He does a lot of episodes of that in the '60s, and the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour does a ton of episodes of that, and you know, it's all going to lead into All in the Family, which of course is going to start in '71 and it's going to run for quite a few years, and he's going to play Mike Stivic infamously in this role. This is where I first saw him, and I was huge into this show, as I was into most of the Norman Lear shows, and just really hadn't seen anything like him on television. They dealt with so many things, and they were hilarious, absolutely, and they also dealt with all the topics, everything that was kind of going on. I mean, whether it was personal issues with each character or politics or sports or whatever was going on at the time, Norman Lear wasn't afraid to face it, which I is a refreshing quality in a creator of a show. And I thought Rob Reiner fit in perfectly with that, and him and Carol O'Connor just have such a great chemistry on screen as Archie Bunker and Michael Stivic, and I just remember always seeing these guys and their contrast to each other, and I loved it. And one of the great things about All in the Family that we could really take a lesson from today, quite honestly, is like you would see these guys argue and bicker and everything else, but I always remember a couple of great episodes where one where Archie Bunker, they mistake him for being uh, they mistake the Archie Bunker household for being a house where a Jew lives, and they mistake him for being Jewish, and they put a swastika on his door, and it's a really serious episode. It's, there's some comedy in it, of course, some levity, but it's actually a really quite serious episode about the Jewish Defamation League and stuff like that, the Jewish Defense League and such. Um, you can see the great contrast with Archie and Mike in that episode. It's a really good one. I would highly recommend it. And then the other episode that I always loved was when Mike and Gloria are moving away, and Mike gets his job in California, and they're getting ready to leave the show. And I just remember that moment because, and it stands out in my brain to this day, because you see these guys bicker for season after season after season. You really don't know if they like each other in some way, shape, or form, because we've seen it on the show. And really, I Archie probably really only doesn't like Mike because he's married his daughter. Let's be honest, right? And at the end, you get this whole thing where Mike goes up to Archie, and they've got their moment, and he goes to Archie and he says, you always thought I didn't like you, but he goes, that's not true. I actually really love you, and that's a really great moment in that show, and it really kind of goes to show you that these guys really don't have the same views on anything at all. Politics, one of them, and there's a lot of politics in that show. And I really wish the people of 2026 could take lessons from the people in the 1970s, which were a little bit more, okay, listen, we're not always going to agree on this topic, but we don't have to hate each other either. I think there's more of that going on today because we got social media and such. People don't really communicate as much. It's more like, well, if you see things one way, I can't possibly deal with you. I hate you. You're the enemy. And this contrast between two guys who had totally different ideologies living in the same house, and yeah, they would bicker, yeah, they would argue, yeah, they would, debate, but at the end of the day, they did love each other. And so that's a lesson and to take from that show. And that's one of the great things about TV like that, is that you get to learn all these great lessons. And All in the Family will always be a classic show, and one of my all-time favorites for sure. And all the characters are amazing on it. And if for some reason this show has not been viewed by you or anybody else, check it out.
All in the Family. If you don't know what it is, you should attempt to watch some of it. And it's gonna, in today's culture, you're gonna rear back a little bit because, again, what Lear does really well is like put up stories that are meant to make you think. And yes, it's a sitcom, and yes, there's some funny moments, but it's also got a lot of drama, and it's got a lot of, like, as Tony said so very well, and I don't need to echo it, but it's just got a lot of emotional connection in it, and it is something to revisit now, and it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you can't go. That show changed television. So, like, he out of the gate, this guy's changing TV.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most amazing shows, and of course, you got him dropping in on episodes of Happy Days and The Super and Free Country and stuff like that, and a couple television movies, and of course, he's going to get into being an iconic writer director,
Right.
which
Right.
I. Do you have anything else to say about his television stuff? Because I'm going to get into
No,
all
no.
the
I mean, he just pops up. The only other one I was going to mention that I thought was interesting is later on, a lot of times he starts playing himself on a lot of appearances, which is great. But later on, he shows up on a very popular show at the time for, I guess it would have been the millennial era. He shows up on New Girl for 11 episodes. And that just shows you how timeless he ends up becoming, is because he's in a show that is like kind of the cultural show. Again, he's in a cultural show in the 70s, and he shows up 2 generations later in another cultural show as a regular. 11 episodes, but he's a regular on that. So, like, it's just fascinating to me of like how his his ability, even on the television side of just being an actor, he can pop in and be these characters. But again, none of it matters. I mean, all matters, but none of it is as powerful to me personally as when we get into his film side of stuff, because he changes the landscape of cinema forever, multiple times.
No, I
And
mean,
this guy puts out the greatest hits of movies you've ever seen. I mean, they're all great hits. It's insanity.
no, I mean, his stuff is, you know, he pops in on a lot of TV shows, and of course, I remember him doing a funny cameo on the Larry Sanders Show
Yeah, yeah.
back in 1994, and so I mean, he's got a great Curb Your Enthusiasm episode as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
His TV work is, we could be here just talking about TV all day, but we definitely wanted to get into some of his movie stuff. His TV stuff is legendary though. And again, yeah, you did touch on New Girl, which he comes in as Bob Day in that role, and the New Girl is classic, of course. Um, he's actually got another role I forgot to mention because he starts out, he's got a small role in Batman,
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I saw that on his list.
and it's the episode the Penguin declines, and he plays a delivery boy. So if you want to see him like in an early, and you will notice it is him. I've seen the episodes quite a few times, and he does that. So check out his. You can always Google his stuff and check out his big TV list and go check out some of those episodes. But we're gonna dive into this movie stuff, which we've talked about his acting side of the movie world, but we're going to talk about him as an acclaimed director, and of course, it'll start with the 1984 movie. This is Spinal Tap,
Which is crazy because that movie, which is, I mean, I've said mine goes to 11. I say it so much out of context wherever I can, but there's Christopher Guest. Where I'm going with this is it this occurs, and then this style of movie, this impromptu-y sort of docu comedy, not real. This vibe of movie, he creates it. This is the really the kind of the, not the launching platform, but he's one of the people that makes this style of movie, which is one of my favorite styles of film ever. Is that vibe? It's also why I love Curb so much. But that sort of impromptu or improvisational type comedy really starts to take off. And Spinal Tap is, I mean, everybody knows. I mean, I assume at this point, 90% of the people that listen to this podcast know what Spinal Tap is. They've got to.
I like to think so, but there's always going to be people that come after, born after these dates that have no idea.
Right.
What it, he's going to do a movie right after that in 1985, and it's a movie that doesn't get talked about that much. And it's a movie he does starring John Cusack and Daphne Zuniga, and it's actually a romantic comedy Christmas road film called The Sure Thing, and I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
people remember it all that well. It actually did. It actually did quite well at the box office because it was like it made like $20 million on like a $4 million budget, but it was directed by Rob Reiner and it was produced by Henry Winkler, who of course is the Fonz, who he was good buddies with, and yeah, I mean it's got John Cusack, Daphne Zuniga, Nicolette Sheridan, and it's actually quite a good movie. One of those John Cusack films that doesn't always get talked about, and because Rob Reiner's got such a thick portfolio of films, this is one of those movies that kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
For sure. And yet at the same time, it's a good movie. I mean, the funny thing is he does, this is Spinal Tap that becomes iconic. A lot of people may or may not remember The Sure Thing. And then immediately after, the series of movies that occurs after this are some of the most acclaimed films ever made. So like, let's just say The Sure Thing is not perfect, but but he's what he steps into, the lessons he learned on that. And this is why I was saying, like, as a director, if you've ever wanted to study film, this guy just went from a very slapsticky sort of vibe comedy. I don't mean like airplane style slapstick, but like it is. This is Spinal Tap is hilariously funny. He goes into more of a traditional comedy, and then he's going to follow it up, but by one of the most influential films of all time. It's considered on many people's greatest film list. I mean, he steps into Stand By Me.
Yeah, Stand By Me is look, I remember watching this movie when I was in New Jersey at the time. And I lived in New Jersey. I was about 10 years old when they came out because it came out in 1986. 1986. My brother was born that year. My brother Jeff was born that year. And I remember watching this movie with friends of mine that I was when I was living in New Jersey, and we were really close. And it was the same type of thing. It was like, there were like four of us, you know, and we were living in where we lived in New Jersey. Um, it wasn't very, it wasn't like a suburb or anything like that. It was very rural. And there was like back areas, and you could go out in the forests and stuff like that. And there wasn't a lot around. We were in a very small town called Glen Gardner, New Jersey, and it was near Clinton, New Jersey. And we actually had to be bussed over from Glen Gardner to Clinton to go to school because there wasn't a school in Glen Gardner. There was a school in Clinton, which was a neighboring town. And I just remember this movie in particular resonating with me because I felt like I was kind of living it. To be real honest with you, because I kind of had like the weird friend that nobody else really understood, and I kind of had the nutty friends that probably doesn't have a lot of friends, and it's like those resonated with me. All these characters did, and I just love this movie. One of the things I love most about it, and is the end quote of that film, which is always just really stuck in my brain, and I think about it all the time. And the end quote, of course, is, "I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12." Jesus, does anyone? And that's, of course, being delivered by Richard Dreyfuss, who in his own right is a iconic actor. And I've always thought about that quote. Like my friends, and not just the people in New Jersey who I've always tried to stay in touch with, but like yourself, because I met you when I was like just about to turn 13 and stuff like that. Now here we are, talking about all our stuff from the past and such. It really, that quote really does resonate. It, I completely 100% agree with the quote, and I've always felt that way. Like, yeah, you're right. You might have these friends later on, but they're more kind of your adult friends. They're not the ones that you kind of learned about life with. And there's something kind of amazing about that.
So it's funny, and I'm not doing this to cause any trigger, but I've seen a lot of people talk about, Stranger Things has ended. They did their series finale, and one of the big things, if you go back and you think about for those that liked that dynamic of the boys in the very beginning, all that the Duffer Brothers did was borrow a little bit from this movie, because it's just, while they were playing D&D, these guys were on an adventure. It was very similar. There's no monsters or horror. This is a Stephen King, but it's not. It's more like he's going to end up doing another Stephen King later on. We'll get to it, but it's more grounded, to Tony's point, and you get that exploration. And what's funny to me is my favorite film from last year is The Long Walk, which again has a very Stand By Me inspired vibe to it, in my opinion. And again, about friendship and about relationships. And that's why, like, I couldn't see this movie when it came out, because I was young, obviously. But when I did get to watch it, I was about 12 years old. And so I related to the character relationships in it and grew from it from there. So it's one of those scenarios of like, it's, again, this movie, Stand By Me, is timeless. It's one of those films. And specifically if you're a young boy, like it's even more timeless. But what blows me away is that while he made that and it's somewhat of a male centered movie, he follows it up with what's considered, at least in my household, and my children have seen it, I've seen it a lot. He follows it up with The Princess Bride, Tony.
Right. This is, an amazing film, more of a fantasy tale, and has one of the great casts you'll ever you'll ever see. I mean, even Andre the Giant is in it, which is iconic. Yeah, I mean, it's The Princess Bride is a classic movie. I mean, it's got everybody in it. It's got Peter Falk and Fred Savage and Carrie Elwes and Robin Wright, and I mean, just everybody you can possibly name. Billy Crystal comes in, of course, because he's really close to Billy Crystal, and so yeah, I mean, it's iconic, man. It's a great film. I remember watching it, again in New Jersey and thinking, this is awesome.
Yeah. And it's again, I've shown it to my kids. There's a great line, the "as you wish" bit, which is what I mean by saying like it's yet another movie that spins more. It has the fantasy, the action, the adventure. I mean, it has sword play, it has all that, but it also has this really interesting lesson to be learned about romantic relationships that I always thought was fascinating because it is fantastical because we all wish we could have the same love that they have in that movie. But like at the same time, you have all these characters around it that make it fun, that make it hilarious. And it just, again, that's another banger. I mean, that's
Yeah.
back to back bangers. You go from Stand By Me to The Princess Bride. And this is the progression of such things because he wraps up The Princess Bride, Tony. And what do we get from that? What do we get after The Princess Bride?
Yeah, maybe the greatest romantic comedy that's ever been written. I mean, it's of course he didn't write this, but I mean he did direct it, of course, when Harry Met Sally. I mean, it's one of the greatest.
Good God.
But I mean, yeah, I mean when Harry Met Sally, and again, what I love about this movie is, of course, it's Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, and again, I've reiterate him and Billy Crystal are really tight, and were really tight until his death, and so it made perfect sense that Billy Crystal would be in this film, and I love it because it's New York, and at the time by the time I see this movie, it is a Farmore rental from while I'm living in Alabama, but because I didn't see it in theaters, but because I was moving and things like that at the time, and I'll be moving from New Jersey to Alabama. But what I loved about it is it's New York, and I had just left, New York essentially, in New Jersey, New York, and I'd go to New York a lot, and so I love being able to see New York that time, that in that era on film. I've always have. It's something I romanticize about, to this day, is being able to see New York on film. And I always like to see the gritty New York, the one that's not is cleaned up. There's something about it on camera that just makes it better. It's not necessarily better to live in, but it was always great for viewing on in movies. And when Harry Met Sally's got all that, and yeah, it's a classic movie. I even worked with the first AD from this movie, who shall remain
Wow.
nameless. We didn't get along at all. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hold it against the movie because it was amazing.
And it has like one of the most iconic, I mean, multiple iconic scenes, but I think the one that most people know is the Cat's Deli scene, and it's just obnoxious.
Of course, and I've been there to that deli many a times, and I've sat in a little spot that, because now there's a big sign above that says this is where the scene this is where that happened.
Yep. Yep.
We've sat there. I've sat there with my, gone up there again with my parents, my brother, and we've sat all over that deli. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing. They embrace that scene in that deli to this day. You still see commercials involving that
Yep.
scene. There's been a
Yep.
few of them lately, and I mean, there's still a lot of talk about that movie to this day, and it's always going to be in the film lexicon. it's a classic film, and it's exactly what a romantic comedy is supposed to be. And it has the great cast, and it has the great director, and it has all the great pieces to make it work. And it's amazing. And then his next movie's completely different.
This is what I love. This is why I was waiting for this list, because if again, as we continue to go through his catalog, you see that this guy does literally every type of movie minus one. The only thing he never did was a big action movie. He had an adventure movie because Princess Bride has a lot of adventure, but he didn't do like a dedicated action, pure action movie. But this guy touches on everything, and he steps into Misery, which is my all-time favorite Stephen King movie. That penmanship wise, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. It's a massive influential movie on me because I remember when I saw it, my mind was absolutely blown. I will never forget the hobbling scene. I'll never forget Kathy Bates, James Caan. I'll never forget anybody in that movie. Every single role in that movie is pristine as they possibly could get.
Yeah.
And my God, what a goldmine of a film. What a goldmine film.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. We've talked about it on the show before. I saw this movie with Richard, and so yeah, I mean, Misery's a classic. James Caan's perfect in the role. Kathy Bates is, I mean, come on, she's absolutely incredible, and everybody's where they should be in that movie. And I've seen the Broadway version as well. That starred
Interesting.
Bruce Willis and Laurie Metcalf in the James Caan and Kathy Bates roles.
Incredible.
And so that was a lot of fun as well. But yeah, I mean, Misery is a classic book, a classic movie, a good stage play. It's everything. So I mean, yeah, it's one of those iconic horror movies, and with maybe one of the great horror villains of all time. Because Kathy Bates is crazy. She's awesome.
Yeah. It's so good. And and then he steps into, so this is, and what's crazy is every time we say this, it's something else. Then he steps into one of the most hard dramas, and he's going to have another one later, but this is a hard drama. And what I mean by that is not hard and difficulty. I mean, this is a pure drama film that has some of the most iconic, and look, all of his movies have had pretty much iconic scenes or iconic lines. And I'm talking about they have lived in pop culture. He steps in to A Few Good Men.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a huge hit. Of course, it's gonna be like a $40 million movie that's gonna make like 250 million, and I mean, it's a big screenplay by Aaron Sorkin, so you know what you're getting right away. And it's Rob Reiner and Aaron Sorkin, and I mean, it's got all the heavyweights, right? You got Aaron Sorkin writing, you got Rob Reiner directing, and the cast from top to bottom is just littered with heavyweights, right? Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, Kevin Pollak, James Marshall, J.T. Walsh, Kiefer Sutherland. I mean, everybody knows all these guys, and it's got iconic moments and great lines. I mean, who has not said, you can't handle the truth? Like, everybody said that or heard it. Everybody has, and it's one of the all time great. It's a great movie. It's just a great movie from top to bottom.
Yeah. Um, there's not much else I can say about it. Again, if any of these, if we have listed, if you've not seen these, I'm sure you have, but if you have not, any of these are worth watching, and you'll love every single one of them. All of them provide value in your life. This one too, even though I believe it was not Antonio probably knows, but it wasn't a big hit. But I
Uh,
really enjoyed the movie North. I liked
yep.
it. A lot of people didn't, but I really liked this movie a good bit. I'm assuming a lot of people didn't.
It kind of goes from a lot of hits, like everything's kind of a hit, 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 and then he's got North, which is going to kind of not be a hit, unfortunately for him. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like a $50 million movie that made like 15 million or something like that. Didn't do as well. Got kind of shuffle. But I mean, Elijah Wood, John Lovitz, Jason Alexander, Alan Arkin, Dan Aykroyd, Kathy Bates. I mean, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, John Ritter, Bruce Willis, Abe Vigoda. I mean, they all pop up. You know what I mean? Again, like because of who he is, he's able to get pretty much whoever he wants to come and do a role. You know, I mean, and that's you'll see that. I mean, his casts are just always big. You know what I mean? Like he's always got the best names, at the time. And whether or not the movie ends up being huge is kind of irrelevant because he's just a great director with great cast members and making good movies. And this was produced by Rob Reiner as well. So
So we leave North, and then we step into what's his next piece there? Is that American President? Is that right?
President in 1995, which is a very good movie.
Absolutely.
Quite a few times, and I mean, Michael Douglas is awesome. I mean, I was even watching him the other night on Pluto TV. I was watching him on Pluto in the streets of San Francisco with him and Carl.
Oh, great movie.
I love that
Yeah.
show. And
Yeah.
Michael Douglas is just the man. And he's in this, and he's dapper, and he's suave, and he's the president, and it's got Annette Bening and Martin Sheen and Samantha Mathis and Michael J. Fox, and it's a movie that does really well at the box office. And yeah, I mean, American President's it's a good film, and another one that was directed and produced by Rob Reiner as well, of course.
Yeah. And you can kind of see like some of these he gets topical and sort of again, not political, he's just topical in the sense of the storytelling. All of his stuff is grounded in reality, and that's what makes him solid, even into from American President into another heavy movie.
Yeah, and of course, the next movie he's going to do will be in 1996, and he'll do a very deep biographical courtroom drama again called The Ghost of the Mississippi, which is a very good film. It just didn't do all that well. It's like a $40 million movie, $35-40 million movie. It did like 15 million. The cast again is amazing. Alec Baldwin, Whoopi Goldberg, James Woods, and Craig T. Nelson. And this is one of those things I wanted to bring up because Rob Reiner and James Woods are two of the most outspoken political people currently. Like Rob Reiner was a pretty outspoken political commentator currently, and so is James Woods to this day. And they have very, very contrasting views at this point. Very different. And one thing I do know for a fact is that James Woods and Rob Reiner were friendly and friends up until the day Rob Reiner died. Again, going to show you that you don't have to always have the same viewpoints. It's okay. And I do know for a fact that the studio didn't originally want James Woods for this role. They didn't think he was old enough to play the role at the time. And Rob Reiner fought for him straight up and wanted him so bad in the movie. And of course, that worked out pretty well because James Woods is fantastic in this movie. And it's a great role, and of course it gets followed up, and he doesn't do a lot of directing for a couple of years, and then he does The Story of Us in 1999 with Bruce Willis, Michelle Pfeiffer, which
Yep,
I think is
classic.
one of the most underrated films. To be real honest with you, I think it's a great film.
It's a very good movie. It's I think as I've grown older, and I haven't seen it in probably 8 or 9 years, but as I've grown older, I've been married for almost 20. You start to understand as you age, this movie ages with you, and that's a rarity. And it's one
Yeah,
of those films that ages with you,
yeah,
and you start to understand context better. It's a wonderful movie.
it's really good, and of course it's there's a lot of heart to it. I mean, bring a box of tissues,
Yeah,
to
one
this
hundred
film.
percent.
You're going to need it, and that's okay because I do like to feel those types of emotions. Um, he's going to do that film, and then he's going to do another romantic comedy in 2003, Alex and Emma, and that's going to have another great cast: Kate Hudson, Luke Wilson, David Paymer. And it's not going to do all that great. It's like a 30 million that does 15, and we're starting. You start to see that trend with people sometimes. Where Story of Us did pretty well. But there's ebb and flow in this industry, right? Like you can have a whole bunch of and have some movies that can be good, but just aren't necessarily released at the right times. And there's a lot of reasons for why a movie underperforms at the box office. It doesn't always mean it's a bad movie. Some of my favorite movies are movies that don't perform well at the box office. That's another one that's a decent film. And then 2005, you get Rumor Has It. Again, another amazing cast: Jennifer Aniston, Kevin Costner, Shirley MacLaine, Mark Ruffalo, Richard Jenkins, Mina Suvari. And this is one that does a little bit better. It's like a 70 million that does like 90, so it's not so bad. Have you seen this film?
Yeah, it's no, well, I remember it. I don't remember watching it in any recent time. I remember maybe seeing it when it came out, but not in any recent past that. Like I haven't revisited that, not because I didn't like it, but it just didn't stick as well. But what I think is interesting is even when he has a little bit of a dip, right after Rumor Has It,
Huge show.
he goes to the stratosphere again. Yeah,
Huge.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
I remember sitting at the dinner table. Like we were downstairs at my parents' current house. We were downstairs eating like Chinese food, at the like the dining table downstairs, and my dad going, let's go see that movie about the two old guys,
Yeah,
and
right.
he's talking about this movie, The Bucket List, uh, directed by Rob Reiner, of course, that brings them back around and doing a movie with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, Sean Hayes, Rob Morrow, and it's a boffo big movie. I mean, because I think that the terminology bucket list was in the American lexicon at the time. Like, it was there, but I know that for a fact that I've heard it way more after this movie came out. Now I
Yeah,
hear when I
yep.
hear people, everybody will talk about having a bucket list. that that came about after this film. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And it's funny and it's heartwarming. It's gut wrenching. It's beautiful. It's literally back to a Rob Reiner. Not that these others weren't the ones that weren't as popular, but this is right back to what he knows in terms of like his maturity and then his storytelling. It is that, and it doesn't. And again, it's a timeless movie. Yes, it's about two quote old guys, but it's still a timeless movie, and that's what makes it beautiful.
He's going
Now,
to
I
do a
have
movie.
not seen the film. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
He's going to do a movie that kind of comes after this that it's extremely underrated. Extremely underrated. It's a romantic comedy drama. It's called Flipped, and he wrote part of the screenplay for it. He produced it. Uh, it's got Anthony Edwards and John Mahoney and Penelope Ann Miller and Aidan Quinn, and it was not a huge movie at all. It was a lower budget film for him. It was like 15 million, made like five. If you can find it, watch it because it's actually quite a movie. Came out in 2010, and this is starting to get to the point where Rob will do kind of some smaller films, and I'll explain why that happens in a minute. But this is one of those movies. It's not as big as a lot of his other films. It's not Stand by Me, but it is quite good, and I think you should definitely check it out. The Magic of Belle Isle, of course, which is another movie with him and Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman, who is one of the greatest actors to ever live. So maybe check out any movie he does. But smaller budget, $5 million. Didn't wasn't in theaters for an extremely long period, but it's a comedy drama. It's a nice film. And then he does this movie, Being Charlie, in 2006 in 2015-16, which is about his son Nick Reiner, about a kid who's got an addiction issue and kind of it. I mean, his son wrote the screenplay, and Rob directed it, and so it's really is about his life. And of course, Carrie Elwes comes back to work with Rob on this movie, and Common is in the movie as well. It was by no means a huge hit, but it was a smaller budget film, like $2-3 million. They got funding for a smaller movie, and made a few $100,000 at the theater. Have you seen it?
No, I have not, but I think it's gut wrenching if I'm not mistaken. Is it not?
Well, absolutely, because I mean, Nick goes through a lot. I mean, it's he's got a lot of drug issues and there's homelessness issues and things like that. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on in that film, without question. And then he's going to work with Woody Harrelson in LBJ, uh, a movie that doesn't do all that great, but it's like a $20 million movie, so it's back up to decent budget. Woody Harrelson, Richard Jenkins, Bill Pullman, Jeffrey Donovan, Jennifer Jason Leigh. Again, a great cast. So check out LBJ.
It's good. It's a good presidential movie. It is good history film.
And then he does Shock and Awe, which is a American drama film, and of course Woody Harrelson and James Marsden and Jessica Biel, Mila Jovovich, Tommy Lee Jones. Again, another Boffo cast. Just at this point, the releases just aren't so wide anymore. So it's kind of at the end there, and of course he does the documentary about Albert Brooks, Defending My Life, which is kind of a play on one of Albert Brooks's classic movies, Defending Your Life, and then finishes it up with 2025. Of course, we've talked about it earlier. Spinal Tap 2: The End Continues, and which is a movie that I think you should watch, but try to find the first Spinal Tap first, so you can watch them both together.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing that I wanted to bring up in fullness. Now that we've covered the list, is directors shift over time, but the one thing about his body of work, and I said it earlier, but I just want to reiterate it. When you look at his body of work, this is a guy that was able to accomplish a box office hit, a critical hit. I'm sure there's some Oscars in there somewhere, nominations at least, off of a variety of all. Like I said earlier, every single genre. This was my dream when I was directing film side of things. I got the one thing that happens a lot in Hollywood inside the industry is you get pigeonholed into certain things. I'll never forget as long as I live when we put out Convergence. I got a phone call from somebody at I forget the guy's name, but he used to be over Warner and he had just stepped away, and he was the guy that was really pushing Chris Nolan, and one of his agents saw one of my films, one of our films, Convergence. They called me, had a conversation. I showed him my next film. He was like, "Oh, well, you're not really we were kind of looking, since you did a kind of a psychological thriller, we thought your next film would be a psychological thriller." It wasn't. My next film was a comedy about two brothers looking for Sasquatch. I'm kind of following the Rob Reiner path because that's what I always wanted to do, is be able to tell whatever stories I wanted to tell. Rob's one of those few directors that got to do that, and he got to do it in a mega way, and that's just extremely rare. You just don't see that a whole lot anymore. Like people, the industry wants to trust that if they hire Drew Hall, he's good at a psychological thriller. That's all he's going to do. That's what we want him to do. That's his machine that he makes. And if you look at Rob, he's one of those guys that defies that logic and says, no, I'm going to do what I want. Spielberg even is in some of that bracket, but not as deep as Rob Reiner. If you look at it from my perspective, Spielberg has some of these dramas and he's tried to spin out more, but he typically goes back to what he knows, science fiction of some capacity or adventure or fantasy, all in the same kind of genre bubble. Reiner didn't have to do that. He could jump around as much as he wanted for a period of time. And then eventually time changes and technology changes and the shift changes and your views change and he starts making more political films. And I get it, but it's just one of those things. Like if we look back at this guy's body of work and we can celebrate it because he's made classics, multiple iconic top 10 list for a lot of people classics. That's a beautiful thing. And it sucks that he's gone because like that guy probably had maybe 2 or 3 more in him that were going to turn out to be classics, just a matter of time. Whereas they were close together in the beginning of his career, he still made classics throughout the rest of his life. Bucket List is a prime example. So I hate that he's passed away, but I love looking at his catalog of work, and I love his library.
That's the one thing about movies that I love so much is that you can go back and revisit them anytime you want to, for the most part, as long as you're able to find the copy of it. So
Yeah, that's true.
and that's why I am often like, we have to preserve movies better. Like I hate the fact that things are going the way of the streaming in a lot of ways, because we sit on this show all the time talking about not being able to find these movies. And that that's not a great thing. That's not something I want to have as the norm going forward, because we're talking about movies that are in the 90s and we can't find them in 2026. That's really not that far back when you think about it. It's not far back in the history. I mean, we were able to preserve stuff in the 1990s. I mean, that's not it's not 1910. It's not that far back. And so we have VHS and we have DVDs and all this stuff, but then all of a sudden they start going away, and then something's out of print, and then nobody has it streaming because that's what everyone wants to do now. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, where the hell is Jack the Bear? You know, where the hell is this is Spinal Tap? Like, you can't get a hold of these films now, and that is not a good thing. It's a very negative thing, and we have to do better. We just all have to do better, and we have to be better in how we consume this stuff, and preserve it for generations behind us, because we're not, hopefully going to be the only people on the planet. Hopefully there'll be people behind us on the planet, and I'd like for them to be able to watch all these films as well.
Well, again, as we've said, I think it's pretty clear that Rob Reiner is one of our favorites. He will be missed. I look forward. I haven't watched Spinal Tap 2 yet. I look forward to watching it. Is there anything else you want to say before we close this bad boy down, Tony?
I think we've said plenty to our audience today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching if you do so. We love the conversations. Keep the feedback and emails and chats and text messages and however else you communicate to us. Please keep it coming. We're looking forward. Next episode, we will jump back into where we were, which is, I believe, in 1994. Is that right? We're still in 94, right?
Yeah, we're about to be
right at the end of 94.
We're about to be in 95. We're about to be
There we go. And we'll keep up with the show if you guys keep listening. And again, thank you so much. Last word, Tony, is all yours.
Let's have a great 2026, and that's all I can really say is I have the best of health, uh, the best of life, and let's take care of each other in 2026. Peace.